The tragic fate of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 has shed light on the stunning fact that every day hundreds of passenger planes fly over war zones, prompting concern among some travelers and inciting airlines and security consultants to scramble for alternate routes. Joining us now with more is WSJ's middle seat columnist, Scott McCartney. Scott, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
So, Scott, how many conflict zones are there around the world right now, and how can we know which of these have surface-to-air missiles on hand?
Well, security experts count 41 kinetic conflicts. That's a term used for when people are shooting things at each other. Most of those don't have surface-to-air missiles. Even fewer have high-powered surface-to-air missiles capable of reaching high altitude where airliners fly. But as we've seen, conflicts escalate, rebels get new equipment, and things get more dangerous.
And sometimes, certainly, airlines don't have all the information about which rebels might have some new equipment. So why don't governments and air traffic control agencies just shut down airspace over serious conflict zones?
Well, it's a complicated question. Governments and air traffic control agencies want the planes overhead because they're collecting fees when the planes use airspace and air traffic control services. But at the same time, they often don't have, the civilian side doesn't have all the information that the military side has. And so, some force may have acquired new capability, and the civilian side of government doesn't know.
That is what worries me. So how hard is it to just avoid these areas altogether? I mean, how much freedom do airlines have to set their own routes the day of flight?
Well, airlines have total freedom. The captain and the dispatcher are responsible for the flight. The captain has ultimate control. Flight plans change all the time. They change daily usually based on weather, winds, congestion, costs, all kinds of factors. They change in the air when planes want to divert around storms or take a shortcut or all kinds of reasons. Certainly in the United States, plenty of congestion forces rerouting of planes. So it's fluid. The captain ultimately has control, but there are now so many conflicts around the world and advisories about different airspace and prohibitions about different airspace that it gets very difficult. I looked at flight paths of planes from the United States into the Persian Gulf, Washington to Dubai, for example, and those flights routinely skirt north of Syria and then come down the border of Iraq and Iran. U.S. airlines aren't supposed to be flying over Iraq, but it's really tricky.
But wouldn't you say that Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 is a little bit of a wake-up call now? I mean, traditionally, some airlines have been more cautious than others, but don't you think they're all now going to go that extra step to avoid certain areas?
Well, I think it's definitely a wake-up call. I think larger, more established airlines have a lot more resources to be informed, a lot more experience, a lot more intelligence information than some of the smaller carriers around the world, which may have a more difficult time. The problem for airlines keeping track of their code share partners, because you don't want to sell a ticket on somebody who's flying someplace that you wouldn't fly. And I think it's a wake-up call for companies and corporate travel managers. They pay a lot of attention to the safety of their employees on the ground. They warn about riots or strikes or weather situations. And now they may have to look in the air, too, and decide, hey, we're going to pick this airline because they're more cautious about airspace issues than that airline.
Okay, Scott, what about me? I'm the traveler and I'm worried. What can I do to check out the route of my upcoming flight?
Yeah, there are a couple tools. It's very interesting. There are two flight tracking services that I think are really helpful: FlightAware.com and FlightRadar24. They tie into air traffic control agency radar. In some cases, they can use the direct position broadcast from flights. So you can use these to look up multiple days of flights and see if on a particular route an airline is making a conscious effort to skirt a certain country that's a trouble spot, or maybe fly over it. You could pick which airline you want to fly, or look at the route, or at least know ahead of time that hey, I'm most likely going to be coming down the border of Iraq, and maybe not be nervous if you know it's going to.
Very useful resources. You can be sure I'll be using them. Thank you so much, Scott, for that.